Barack Obama and Bill Clinton will be hitting the campaign trail together this week, Wednesday, in Orlando, Florida. It will be the first time the two former rivals will be appearing together at a campaign rally. Mark Walsh is a Democratic strategist. Scott Migley is a Republican strategist. And Mark, first to you, what took so long?
What took so long for Bill Clinton to join the campaign trail? Well, I think there was a lot of positive momentum, so you don't need the big dog, as they used to call him, to come on and make the message clear for everybody, or at least clarify the message. But I do think this is the perfect time. As your station keeps telling us, 9 days left. I think Bill Clinton is going to make a tremendous impact and just add fuel to the fire to the message that Obama's delivered. One last thing, he's so good in key states, and that's where I think Clinton's going to go.
Scott, what sort of problems are Republicans having in Florida?
Well, I think clearly the message over the final days here is clear. It's that Obama's tax policies are simply wrong for Americans. As John McCain has openly said, you know, America was built upon the foundation that we create the opportunities for wealth, not simply spread the wealth around. And I think that in the final days, these undecided voters are starting to come back, which is why you see the polls of likely voters throughout the country closing in numerous states.
Scott, what polls are you talking about?
There are many different polls that you see throughout. You know, if you just look at Real Clear Politics, you know, the averages are starting to come back when you look at likely voters and not simply registered voters that are being polled.
All right. The View co-host Elizabeth Hasselbeck was talking about Sarah Palin's wardrobe on the campaign trail today and made a pretty incendiary charge. Watch.
Instead of the issues, they are focused, fixated on her wardrobe. Now, with everything going on in the world, seems a bit odd. But let me tell you, this is deliberately sexist.
Scott, do you agree with Elizabeth Hasselbeck that the media is deliberately sexist in how they've been covering Sarah Palin?
I think what's more important is that we look, I mean, just a few moments ago, you showed breaking news of things that are happening in Syria and Iraq. I mean, there are more important issues than the clothes that Sarah Palin is wearing. Most importantly, I mean, you know, Joe Biden himself has says that we're going to be tested. Are we sure that Obama is ready to be president and to be tested on day one? I don't think many Americans believe that to be the case, which is why, if you look at any poll, when it comes to national security issues and terrorism, John McCain leads overwhelmingly with those voters. And these are the reasons that John McCain is going to be the next president of the United States.
Mark?
Well, I think since Scott didn't answer your question, I will answer your question, which is no, it's not sexist to take a look at how Sarah Palin behaves as a candidate. As a candidate, she has consistently struggled with the truth. I think she has consistently struggled with her perception that she presents as opposed to her actions. These clothes purchases are, in fact, fair game. It's as fair game as the other things that the other parties brought up about Barack Obama's past. And let's be clear that this election is not about clothes. It's not about Bill Ayers. It's not about Joe Biden saying something aside. This election is about the politics of the past with Bush and John McCain and the politics of the future of Barack Obama. So it is not sexist, and that's my answer to your question, David.
Now, Mark, what about this issue, though? I mean, suppose, I mean, we do have this sort of breaking news of a U.S. attack inside Syria. It appears that this is simply part of the effort in Iraq and that there was something going on just across the border, and U.S. forces decided they needed to go in and take it out. But are you nervous at all about some sort of big event, either overseas or having to do with foreign policy, changing the dynamic in the last week?
Well, of course, everybody's nervous that some outside event affects an election for the wrong reasons. And I am never going to be one to say that the Bush administration would do anything around an election to affect it, although some may have made that accusation in the past. I believe the Bush administration is trying to do the right thing. This is a major event, as your news station is covering it. But I don't think the American people are looking at an event like this and saying that's the single reason to vote yes or no for Obama or yes or no for McCain. They're looking at the overall pattern of how this nation has behaved the last 8 years, and they're looking for the next 8 years or the next 4 years, hopefully 8 years under Obama. So to your point, yes, it's important, but is one news event going to change the dynamic? I don't think so.
Scott, you get the last word. 10 seconds.
Well, I think it's important, too, as we look at the economic crisis that's going on in this country. It's not the 8 years of George W. Bush. You know, we can go back. The economic crisis in this country started with the mortgage crisis and the housing market, which was begun
in the early
1990s under the Clinton administration.
But Scott, Republican strategist Scott Migley, thank you very much. Mark,
thank you.
News from Syria. A U.S. helicopter attack has been reported along the border between Syria and Iraq. A Syrian spokesman says 8 people were killed. Witnesses claim that 4 U.S. helicopters landed in an area along the border, that American paratroopers got out, that they killed 8 people. Stormed a building and then got back on their helicopters and left. And again, this was first reported by Reuters, but now the Syrian government is confirming it. Israeli television is also reporting eyewitnesses describing the scene as one in which U.S. soldiers stormed a building in a raid. Again, the state news agency for Syria says that 4 U.S. helicopters took part in the raid. This would be the first time in U.S. history that American forces has been involved in attacking Syrian territory. Moving on now in the world of politics, let's bring in our panel of journalists. Jim Warren is the former managing editor for the Chicago Tribune and an MSNBC contributor, and Jonathan Allen is a reporter with CQPolitics.com. And Jim, even though it's hard to sort of put all this in perspective in terms of what really happened with this raid, is there any sort of political angle to it in terms of what sort of responsibility the candidates have to either speak out on something like this, or do they simply wait for more information like the rest of us do?
Well, presumably they will, and presumably they'll be contacted by the White House if they haven't already and given a quick briefing on what was going on. It was interesting, we were talking about that New York Times piece in the Sunday magazine this morning, about which apparently Karl Rove is very upset, seeing too much internal backbiting and finger-pointing among folks regarding how the McCain campaign's gone. But it tells how there have been different storylines, and the first storyline the McCain campaign had to do with the heroic fighter versus the quitters. Back then, David, as we remember, the notion was that McCain's strength in the national security area would be one that would be a formidable challenge for Barack Obama. Then comes the economic mess, and now he's taken attack of the, John McCain is taking attack against the big tax and spend liberal. He's still the heroic fellow, but against the tax and spend liberal. Now, here, is this something that could plays out in the end, that play in the last few days of the campaign, that allows him to say, hey, I'm the guy with experience in this area, who do you trust more? I think to that extent, if this is a precursor to something much bigger on the foreign policy realm, maybe, just maybe, it slightly alters the calculus.
Jim, I got to ask you about something completely different as we watch this McCain video, and there he was with Chuck Grassley, and a lot of us will not soon forget the article in the Washington Post, I think it was back in April, where the Washington Post reported an incident on John McCain's alleged temper, in which John McCain apparently got into it with Charles Grassley, and at one point, according to the Washington Post account from 1992, he mocked Grassley to his face, used a profanity to describe him. Grassley stood and, according to participants in the meeting, told McCain, I don't have to take this. I think you should apologize. McCain refused and stood to face Grassley. There was some shouting and shoving between them, but no punches, recalls a spectator who said that Nebraska Democrat Bob Kerrey helped break up the altercation. Does it just make it, I don't know, maybe it's me, but doesn't it make it strange then to see John McCain and Charles Grassley there together embracing each other?
Well, David, if the two of us had $1 for every time John McCain has noted that he would not win any popularity contests in the U.S. Senate, we could, head off on some cruise to the Caribbean, tomorrow if we desired. I think the McCain reputation in the Senate is pretty clear. When I was there for 8 years, there were tales of lots of different fights with lots of different folks. I remember spending a lot of time with him and Cindy on the Straight Talk Express during the 2000 campaign, particularly a week in South Carolina when everybody else was in Iowa, ironically, in Iowa for the straw poll, which McCain was not participating in. And boy, oh boy, some of the tales by John McCain about some of his buddies and not real buddies in the U.S. Senate were pretty revealing. So, is he a guy with a thin skin? Yes. Is he a guy who's proven very volatile? Is he a guy who's bad-mouthed a fair number of his colleagues? Yeah, but expedience is such and political reality is such that Charles Grassley wants to help McCain win his home state, so, you will put that to the side, perhaps leaving your true feelings, if you're Charles Grassley, to your own memoirs.
Indeed. Jim Warren, MSNBC contributor. Jim, thank you very much.